telling Darren that so I'm gonna go ahead and call us to order. I magically double booked myself because I'm hoping to be at the attendance hearing at some point, but if not, it is what it is. So I can always send written testimony. We really have two agenda items that are pretty complementary. So every committee is supposed to update their work plan and submit budget requests. Those are our agenda items. So Darren was kind enough to to do two things. One, he created a folder for us as a committee. So we have one place in SharePoint where we can upload different documents. It is not yet the end all be all of all the documents, but it will be because he created it this morning. Two, I asked him to share as part of the invite, so we would have at the top of our inboxes and nobody had to go looking for a bunch of different links. The most recent work plan that we submitted, and I think you attached my OSCE testimony, but with the OSCE testimony was actually the PowerPoint update we put together. That was a really good recap of the work. So that is our purpose today, if there's nothing else that is immediately pressing. So I'll stop there. And
I don't see that stuff in my inbox.
So it's attached to the calendar invite.
I just pulled it up. It's what he just sent us not too long ago, Ruth.
I also shared a link to the 2022.
I was just able to pull it up.
All right, so I'm logging in as well because I have too many Outlook accounts. Give me 1 second. So
I'm supposed to get the documents off Assembly. Is that the idea?
No, they're in our SharePoint. So there is a link in the chat now. What Darren did was he created a folder for our committee, for our board governance committee, where all of our files will be moving forward. So he just dropped the link in the chat to the SharePoint. And that way, no matter what the meeting is, we'll be able to go back and pull it and we don't have to go through Assembly every single time. You see that or?
Yeah, so what should we be opening?
So we should be opening the work plan. All right, so it's probably helpful. This OSCE testimony maybe can come out of here because it's mine only, but I'll give people a chance to just look at it briefly. Because that's always helpful for me to orient myself. Our really main agenda item today is to update the work plan for the year to come. And so thinking about just how we continue moving this work forward, some of the checkpoints in the work. And I remember there being an outstanding question of, are there other engagement opportunities that we want to expand upon? But so those were the 3 outstanding questions I remember coming up from our last meeting. And then once we talk about the updates to the work plan, we can transition that into any corresponding budget requests.
So, Ebony Rose, help me understand if this is appropriate for this meeting or when I should put it. So I'm on the research side. So it says the research lit review is completed. I guess that's what the folks from AU did. But there's a world of research on this. So where does that come in to look at?
Say more.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of research on ways in which governance doesn't help, and research on mayoral control. And do we want to look at any of that? How it works in DC, I mean, academics have looked at it.
Are you asking for us to do another lit review?
Well, I remain fairly vague about what we're trying to do here. But if part of what we're trying to do is, so if part of what we want to do is pull together what is the evidence or the literature about mayoral control in DC, we have not fully done that. Obviously, we're not going to 100% do it. So my question is, do you intend to look at that at all? I mean, there are academics that have looked at it. You know, two that I'm thinking of because they were on a recent syllabus of mine was Jeffrey Morrell, who's done something on mayoral control, and Jeff Hennig, who did something specifically on DC. He originally did it on the old school board, but then I believe updated it. And Hennig has just been in touch with what DC has been doing for a long time. So, or maybe we could just have him as an expert interview. I guess my question is, we've heard from people in DC, but I always think it's also helpful to have sort of a broader perspective.
So we've heard from a little bit of both, and I'm going to try to say back to you what I think I'm hearing, because I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding. If you're asking, are we going to continue to learn? The answer is yes. There is an assumption baked in that like we'll continue to have these meetings, we'll continue to invite people, we'll continue to review materials. As far as the work plan goes, we did have a specific item or task that was what the AU grad students pulled together, which did look at just different governance structures. It was not necessarily an opinion piece. We also, the other thing that's will be added to this folder was the research the board had already done and pulled together. Now, I think you're right that there's a lot of things out there. I also think you're right when you say we're not going to get to 100% of the things. So when I asked, like, so are you suggesting, like, what is the activity? I think we will continue to learn and engage, but I don't know if you're asking for something separate and apart.
And if I may, and since me and Ruth have worked on other stuff where we did the research stuff like that, so I just want to clarify, Ruth, are you asking that, are we going to continue to look at literature that informs the recommendations, which is part of that I see down at the bottom draft recommendation? Are you saying that, are we going to look at particular pros and cons of mayoral control and things like that so that it informs our recommendations? Is that what you're kind of like more pointedly to say, okay, so yeah, if we had a lit review, but what came out of that lit review, that's going to inform our recommendations? Is that what you're kind of seeking?
Yeah, I mean, the lit review, if I'm remembering correctly, it was more a review of how other states and districts govern themselves. It was pretty specific and very helpful, very useful. But to Jacques' point, yeah, as we look at this, what do people who have studied it think is worth looking at it? What have they found?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess my first question really was, is this the right, I feel a need for that. So my first question really was, is this the right place to say that? And just to make sure that we get on the work plan, let's hear from additional people. Or is that already implied? And at our next meeting, we're going to say, oh, here's the people that we would like to like to consider hearing, that we'd like to hear from.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the place where we're trying to list all the activities, right? Like, so the things we want to do this year, in my head, some of what you're talking about is implied, and maybe we should call it out more explicitly. That's one of the reasons things like expert interviews is in progress. But if there's more specificity, we should add to that. I'd welcome it.
Would specificity as in names, who do we want to hear from?
No, not the names, the activities. So like your first question was, is this the place where we raise things like what we want to do? And so the answer is yes. I think what I took from what you're saying is, when I look at this document, I see expert interviews on here. I would assume some of that will go into draft recommendations. But to your point, I think we can call out what you're describing a bit more explicitly, because in my head it's implied, and that's not always the best way to track our work.
Oh, okay. How would you do that?
What do you mean?
So if we want to be more explicit about it, what?
I think it would be adding, so look, we have a column that says activities. I think it would be adding a line item of the activity more explicitly as you're describing it. And then saying when in our process we're going to do that. I can share my screen if that's helpful, if visuals are helpful.
I mean, I'm looking at the work plan.
Mm-hmm. So in looking at the work plan, there's a column that in my head is still initial info gathering. What you're describing to me sounds like an info gathering activity. It is not explicitly listed here in the way you're describing it. So do we want to just add a row that describes what you're talking about, or is there another way you would suggest to capture it?
So the current work plan does not have something called info gathering. It does say research.
Yes, it does. In line 2, it says phase 1, initial info gathering.
Oh, at the top part, I see, okay.
Yes, and then below that, there are the types of activities that we're listing as info gathering. I made the assumption that what you described is captured under expert interviews, and then we probably need another round of that, which means we would need to indicate different dates. But I also can appreciate the specificity with which you described it. And so I guess I'm trying to capture what you're describing. One way might be to add additional dates for the year coming, because we can get rid of, like, not get rid of, but we can hide some of these columns of the work that's already been done. Or we can literally add a row with more explicit language or different language that speaks to this and add dates, unless there's something else you would like to suggest.
I mean, the category expert interviews captures a good bit of what I'm talking about. And then the other one would be, I don't know what synthesis of research means. If synthesis of research means someone on the staff is going to look at some of the major pieces of work around mayoral control, then it would fall under that. I don't know if that's what's intended.
Yes, that would be what is intended. Is that they're looking at the expert interviews, they're looking at the lit review, they're looking at some of the past documents of the board that have been brought together, and they're looking at the things that come out of the community meetings, the engagements that we've had, to pull together like a synthesis of all the things, and which will inform our draft recommendations.
And I guess I'm asking explicitly to include in that the findings from, I'll name 2 people. Jeffrey Morrell and Jeffrey Hennig are 2 people who have done a lot of work around mayoral control and generally and in DC. And that kind of work, I think, should be part of what gets reviewed and summarized.
So maybe we should add a tab because we did, or we can just add the previous document. I remember at one of our early meetings as a committee, we listed people who we wanted to hear from. And so our intent was to work our way through that list, which I think is different than, like, we're talking about what are the activities versus like who isn't, like who we're pulling from in those activities, right? Like I'm not at the level when I say, all right, we're going to hear from people. I want to hear from the Ward 7 Ed Council, right? Like that's not,
so
I would
maybe
put
we
that
should
in our work plan. I do think we should capture that somewhere. So should we add a tab, or should we just add that document to the folder and have it as a running document?
Maybe somewhere to be identify research and speakers who will be tapped, just so that we know we're doing that. It's not a big deal. I don't, this has already taken more time than I expected. I just really want to say, at some point, I want to be able to say that we can put it into the work plan, or just know that we need to come
Well,
back.
I want to put things into the work plan. That's the purpose of this meeting.
So then I think it
I
should
think what
say
I want-
identify researchers and speakers we'd like to tap.
Can you put in a row where you want to put that? Like when, so what we're doing now is we're inserting rows and we're marking the dates when we're going to do the activities. So I hope what you're hearing from me is, yes, we should do those things. And when do you think we should do it? And how do we represent it in our work plan?
Do you want me to use it right into the SharePoint document? I didn't realize that.
I would welcome that, yes.
I created a 2022 version. This is the 2021 version. So would you all prefer going to this other one, just so it's the correct date? Because this is all based on 2021.
I see that at the top.
So
yeah.
can we just say to Darren to include in the new version, identify a line to the, somewhere in there, identify the researchers and experts that we want to, I'm saying TAP, because maybe we want to bring them in and maybe we want to read them.
You basically like we did with ours, with the accountability and assessments. Yeah. We brought in experts from with various views. My professor had one view, and then I forget the other young man, Patrick or something to that extent. He had a view, and we kind of like played those off of each other. That's what you're looking to do, is have those experts come in, identify those experts who would have those two you've mentioned so far, have them come in and talk as panelists about the pros and cons of
yeah. I mean, and it could be at a meeting like this, or it could be at a general meeting. I think at this point, probably.
I think we did we have both? I know they came to a working meeting.
We did have both. We had a couple in the committee and also two or three panels.
Oh, Jack Snyder, that was his name. I don't know why I was trying to make it a P, but Snyder came and Simmons came and
the guy from Kentucky or Tennessee or something. Yeah.
Okay, so we want to do another round of expert interviews. Are there, since there has to be a plan, are there dates, like as far as our timeline, right? Like, because what I don't want to happen is for us to just have a list of activities. We leave this meeting, we need to submit a plan. I turn around and I create the dates on the back end. Like, I'm asking for the full thing together. It's like, all right, do we want to have, when do we want to do that? Do we see that as an ongoing activity? Do we see that as, because we started one round, like we completed our first round, which is one of the reasons I attached the PowerPoint in the folder, or I had Darren attach it to the invite. But are we saying that for the next couple months, we want to continue to do this in committees? Are we saying, like, what's our desired appetite for the lift on this?
Well, we're in March, so why don't we say April, May, June? And then if we need to add to it, we will. Or April to July. It doesn't matter to me. I'm trying to be helpful, and I feel like I'm somehow holding things back, and I'm trying to just help move forward. So,
All right, well, I'll work with Darren to figure out how to represent that. Okay, are there other activities that we should be continuing, adding, capturing? Now I can think of a few. All right.
Well, go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so I think we need to keep the synthesis of research. We just need to update the dates on that. Okay. I think we need to keep the draft recommendations and update the dates on that. I do want us to think about full board feedback when we want to have something to the full board. And if there are, when we want to have something to the full board, I would like to entertain, other than community meetings, if there are other ways we should be capturing feedback. I don't think we have anything explicit around that. I thought that was actually a really good question. I think actually Representative Parker raised it after the last round of fall engagements and said, hey, is there something else we could or should be doing to gather people's views? I don't know if that's a survey or a poll or something else, but I think something like that could be valuable.
Ebony Rose, would you be open to, like we did with the assessment? That's the only thing I have a reference point to, so I keep referring back to it. But like Darren put together for us a survey that we used that informed a lot of the recommendations that we made. Are you suggesting that we have a survey such of that nature?
Yeah, I'd totally be open to something like that. I think something like that could be helpful. I don't want to take for granted that everybody's going to come to a meeting. Exactly. And I think sometimes the anonymity is helpful for people, and you can, carry it far and wide.
Right, because a lot of people, because of where they work, they may work for the administration, they may work for different things, do not want to give their honest opinion, and a survey allows them to do that. We put it out there. Darren is great at creating them. He helped me with a lot of different things, and so Darren is great at creating them. Not that I'm trying to put all the work on him, but yeah, I think we should do that, a survey of some sort, that we have a period of time that we can get out to our communities.
And do we think that is something we would want to do before, like another round of community meetings? Do we see that as something we leave open for a period of time?
I would ask the question, I would answer that question by asking this question. It says community meetings are in progress. Can you
we have 2 rounds.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, right. So I'm happy to take a step back. Okay. So what's implied in this document is when we initially created the work plan, we assumed the following. One is that we would do engagement, we would gather information enough to put together like a draft recommendation that we would release to the public, like board first and then the public. And then we would say, all right, we would do another round of engagement with the actual recommendation saying, did we hear you correctly? Are there things that we are missing? Are there things that we are misrepresenting? Are there things that, we just could refine a bit better? Because people tend to respond when they have something in front of them and they'll say, hey, no, that's not exactly what I meant. Or I see you said expert interviews. Can we do exactly this? Right? Like that's about that, getting to that level of feedback is super valuable. So our first round of community meetings, which actually should be marked complete. I don't think anybody marked it complete, was the fall engagement sessions. So my question is, should we do a survey before we release our initial draft recommendations? My guess is we should.
I would say as well, because you wanted to be informed by what that feedback from that survey says. You want to have that larger community and base a lot of your recommendations on that.
Okay. Yeah. So so we'll add that in before.
So when are we going to develop our draft recommendations?
Well, that's the question. That's what we're figuring out together.
Okay. Well, so it sounds like that should be soon, so in the near term.
Yeah. So
it can be further. A second round can be further informed by all this other stuff.
Right. So that's what we're kind of saying, because in that, what I'm reading as we go through this, I know we have to change the dates, but so you've completed the community meetings, but we want to have both the survey and the expert interviews and synthesize all that before the draft recommendations. That's the process that we're kind of agreeing to at this particular time. I don't think, Ruth, we've set timetables to those, right. But we're talking about in chronological order. That's what we would like to do, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
So I would offer that in this 2022 board governance, we should add between expert interviews and synthesis of research survey. And my guess is that the expert interviews and the survey are going to overlap as far as the dates,
They can.
right? So like
They
if
can.
we, you know, that could be a thing.
I
We
did
should.
about the dissertation. They can. They can.
My guess is they're gonna, because we have it on like a weekly basis, you know, so they're gonna overlap, and then we should just map out based on that and how long we want to, and the question is, how long do we want to leave the survey open? And these are some of the things we can set some metrics probably at our next meeting, because like we probably want to know how many people we're trying to reach. If there are certain populations we definitely want represented, like those types of things, in addition to some of the questions Representative Wattenberg was asking about mapping out who, if they're you know, the people we haven't talked to, given we've already talked to some people, but who are we missing? Yeah, so let's, Darren, I don't want to mess anything up while I'm in here too.
And Representative Thompson, can I ask, what is the ultimate date that you would like to do? Like that process we just went through with the framework. When is it that you're trying to have recommendation that comes before the working group to the full state board to be put into a resolution? Do you have a kind of like an idea of when that is?
So in a perfect world, if there was nothing else happening, I would love to have something out and starting to be socialized by the beginning of the next council period.
Okay.
I don't know, and this is why I'm encouraging us to kind of map out and put down dates. I don't know if that's realistic for the following reasons, and
that's basically January, right? When a new council, whatever the new people come in, they're sworn in, all stuff like that. January, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So all these things will happen. That's in this right here in front of us. Phase 2, phase 3 will have happened by then.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm okay with it. I just need to wrap my head around time.
Me too. That's
Let me see if I understand this. So that in other words, by the time we reach January, we will have done the surveys, developed the recommendations, and had community engagement and refined our recommendations. Is that?
By the time we reach January, we will finalize our recommendations. So we would have already released our draft recommendations. We would have gotten a second round of feedback around those. We would literally be saying, here's our full package. So phase 1, phase 2, and be moving into like literally, there's no more that we can put in. To be fair,
that's about the same period which we were aiming for. We pushed it back and just had it. But for the framework, it was basically the same time period.
Well, and in this case, it's extra important in a way because not only do we, because there's going to be elections. It's a new council.
Exactly.
Also going to be
so that allows
board.
this group of people who are on the State Board of Education and also people who are on council, to look at it and have input on it.
And I'll tell you the other reason that the date was elevated for me was because it tends to be helpful to get something at the beginning of the council period as opposed to the end. Like I want to give it the full amount of time for them to wrestle with and think about their own planning and agenda, and like committees would have changed, all the different things. So to me, that is it is a good time given how they plan and how they work. And at the end of the day, PARA is a piece of local legislation. And so I want to keep the people who would be most needed to act on this. I want to be realistic about giving ourselves the most runway around that.
So another way to sort of think about the timeline is in terms of the board, that maybe we want to take a vote in November aim for a November vote. Gives us a month of grace if we need it to add something, change something, but basically aim for a November vote on the recommendations.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, I think it could be. Are you saying vote in November in case we can't vote in December?
I'm just saying, life happens, so we could be planning if we're planning on a December vote and suddenly there's a new pandemic and it doesn't even allow us to do cyber, right? We will have missed our deadline. So let's aim for November, and it just gives us a month.
In the event that you have to move it back
exactly
to
exactly.
December, we have that extra month if we have been concentrating on November.
Yeah.
'Cause
Now
we moved ours back twice, I believe, is what we moved ours back.
Now, one other thing to consider, and it has pros and cons, and it may not be so relevant because we're DC and most things get decided actually, I take that back, put that aside. One of the things that we did 2 years ago, which Jacques remembers, is we actually tried to have the board put out some recommendations on the STAR framework before the election, so that it was part of the campaign. And I think it helped people sort of think about it, focus on it, get feedback on it as they were campaigning. So that would be an argument to try to do it in September.
I'm honestly less, so I am less concerned with silly season, as I call it, because none of it's rational to me, the campaign stuff. I do, and so I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I think that particular period of time is completely unwieldy, quite frankly. But I also, that being said, that could be the case, depending on how we map out our activities and our engagement. I would not want to sacrifice engagement to get something out for campaign season, because then we don't control it in the same way anymore, and we're not inviting the people who participate aren't the same. And I'll say that I think it's actually really important for this particular topic that we have a really long runway around engagement and building understanding. It's just not, yeah, it's an unwieldy subject.
And
So
what I'll say to that, Ebony Rose, is that while we definitely want to know different candidates' opinion on governance and stuff like that, I think that's important to the conversation in general and stuff like that. I don't think it's absolutely necessary that we have to have recommendations. I think, campaigns are going to be campaigns, and each person runs on their own thing. And even the people that are currently on the board have their opinions about what mayoral control looks like or how effective it's been and stuff like that. But you do kind of want to know what candidates are thinking around that, and how we go about doing that can be interesting. It doesn't have to come in the form of, this is what the board has agreed to say on it. But, we would love to know what your thoughts process is. And I don't know how that comes up in different forms and stuff like that, but we'd just be interested to know what it is. So that's more or less my process. I don't want to make it an assignment, is what I'm saying, for this group. Right. I don't want to make it an assignment for this group, but I'm interested in hearing what candidates feel about it.
Oh, of course. I mean, like we had a question about this at our Ward 7 Dems forum last weekend. I totally invite conversation around it. I am leery of moving the deadline with the hope as if we could come up as, I don't think we're the right body to create a campaign engagement strategy around this. Like I don't know what that audience looks like for us. Yeah, but I do think, and I also think that we would have by then, if we are saying final recommendations in January, we would have already released draft recommendations. And there would have been, it will be out in the world for conversation. What I'm reacting to is pushing the final recommendation.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about final. No. Let me clarify.
Okay.
And I wasn't clear. I totally mean draft, totally mean draft. And the point to, in response to some of the things you said, is that there's a lot of different ways that people have conversations, but one sort of way that people do have conversations is through political campaigns. That is part of their point. And while they're not as inclusive as we all wish they would be, they are a big way in which ideas start to get talked about and sort of drift around. So totally mean draft.
So
And-
would that mean publishing the draft recommendations that I see as part of phase one? Is the last item on phase one? Is just kind of like letting that be known? Is that what you're requesting? Because I just don't want to add an assignment. Are you saying making that more transparent?
I guess that is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because there's that area that says right there that draft recommendations. And if we had something draft and we just shared it publicly, if we reached that point at that particular time and it just so coincides with where people are in the election and stuff like that, but that we release it. Again, I'm not trying to add any work for Darren or the staff or anything, and keep within the timetable that the chair has. But that's where I would say, if we're going to do it, it would go.
I agree.
Okay, I've been called for the attendance hearing and I missed it. It's fine.
Somebody just told me there's like, who has an attendance on a Friday when everybody basically is shutting down for the weekend and it's beautiful outside?
It's anti-attendance. Like this is the whole
It's
problem
like,
with
it is
anyone.
really calling on you to like, am I going to be in attendance for the attendance? Because
Right.
that's what it's basically asking you.
It should be a hearing about how if we had outdoor education, it would increase attendance.
Jesus. So yeah, I'm gonna work through that.
But if you want to, but are you, I mean, if you want to go, Ebony Rose, we.
Oh,
we
no.
can-
I already missed it. It's cool.
All right.
I was called. I saw the text late that I was called. And yeah, it is what it is. I want to make, this is actually more important to make sure it's submitted because I technically can submit testimony after this, as we all know. Okay. So are there other things that we want to make sure are included that aren't included here? Anything else that we're not thinking, that we haven't thought of yet?
I mean, one thing you might put on, again, I'm now doing what Jacques is doing, which is to go back to what we did on the A&A committee, is at some point to bring this to the whole board via a panel at a board meeting. Or, you know, and the other thing is to invite, specifically to invite people to come and comment on it. I think we did that last October or something, I can't remember.
That was toward the end. Wouldn't that fall within 3? Present.
You know,
either
I'm
or.
sorry, I'm not on the thing anymore, so.
Yeah, I'm
maybe
kind
just-
of trying to go by the timeline that you have. I'm trying in my mind trying to back it up from where the chair has said she would like to have the recommendations and have vote and stuff like that. November, January, December, and back up. And so would that go into somewhere in phase 2?
Yeah, I think that's so 2 things. I think that's a good idea. I think it's in my head it fits in 2. And let me tell you why. Because at 2, we're starting to bring it to the full board for feedback. We might want to do it. It is possible that we could do it between the census, like right before we do release the draft recommendations, in order to help people along, like to, you know what I mean? Like to prime people to think about this is coming up at a future meeting. We're doing as like when I think about the educator practice committee, you know, the panel we'll have at our working session. Is it our working session, our public session? The panel we have at our public session this month is coming out of us having panels as a committee and starting to socialize some ideas. So like that, making sure the board is brought along and has what they need to be able to give the right amount of feedback and be engaged in this process is important. So I do think that's a good activity to add. One of the other things that I have heard come up around different things we do is every once in a while, somebody says, oh, there's an expectation that you all as board members are having meetings in your ward. Or like they'll ask us to take things to our PTAs. And I do want to, if that's something we would want to happen, I think we should kind of draft that out so people will know and kind of can anticipate. And we can look at that against just other work that board members have. So if that's an expectation we might have at any point, and that people are going out to engage their, people in their wards, we might want to add that as an activity at some point as well. Does that sound right? Or like, I'm not trying to spring stuff on people.
No, I think that's right. I guess one thing to keep in mind, people do that differently. Like I do all of my, I wouldn't say I've never made an exception, but for the most part, the Ward 3 Ed Network and I try to have we try to have one meeting, like, so that I would want to do it at the Ward 3 EdNet meeting.
Well, I'm not going to tell people how to do that. I just I'm sensitive to the fact that these requests come up and people haven't necessarily planned for them, and people need lead time. And if you're working with different groups, you want to be able to flag, I want to get on your agenda, or be able to look out and say, all right, here are the events that are happening during that time. So we probably would want to include.
Something very strange is going on in our chat.
Ignore it. We'll let Darren take care of that. Yeah, that would be my recommendation, is that we should just add it as an activity, because it's something we tend to use as a board regularly, and we don't, I don't see it in people's work plans. Okay, so it sounds like, I'm going to repeat back what I think are the things that we're adding, which are board member expectations for ward engagement, or some language like that. When we do that, we want to add a survey. We want to make sure that there is a board meeting that we bring a panel to. Board meeting, governance panel. And did I miss anything as far as the added activities? Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else, and what we'll do is Darren and I will work together to update the dates and ping you all so you can look at, because I think for me it's helpful to see see the draft as we have kind of backwards engineered this out with the goal of that final, that January date, beginning council session date. Can we move to what resources we would need to get this done, so we can submit any budget requests we might have, if that's okay? All right. So sounds like, all right, what do we need? Sounds like we're gonna need some printing. And I don't know what you all use for the survey. Like if it was just that we use, I can't remember. Do we need resources around that?
We didn't. I will say, we also didn't we did a lot of different surveys, because we were trying to specifically reach different groups. So we had a principals one, we had a teachers one, and a parents one. The parents one was right, is the one that we're kind of trying to copy here, a public survey. And what I would say is that it'd be great to have a, I don't know, maybe some effort to bring it out into the community. It's more of a staff commitment than it is a staff time commitment than it is a money commitment. I mean, I know Empower Ed went out with their, with their scan sign and just got a huge number of surveys completed that way around accountability. And I thought it was just really interesting. So it might be something to look at, but I don't think it costs more money. It's more a staff time thing.
Staff is money. They are a resource. I know that Patricia Stamper did a lot of that work, and it wasn't just that the things were on poles, because the one on the pole in my neighborhood fell down, and I don't know if anybody scanned it, but Patricia Stamper did her thing as far as engaging people. I do. When I think about what it takes to get that done, it would be staff time. It would also be like printing and stuff, because we would need to be able to put it out there. I don't know if we need to have some associated costs with any other like community meetings or engagement activities, like if we always commit to having food, or if we always commit to whatever else is required. But we should, like, what is our standard for things that we provide at public meetings? Because we do kind of have that built in here. I also don't know if we've ever, or even if this is allowed, but like, if we have online surveys, is there a reason we don't use like paid promotion as far as social media? Is that like not allowed for DC government or something?
Darren, are you there? I mean, I think we do need a much better system for doing surveys. I mean, one thing, maybe this is a group that could sort of pilot it, is, there are groups that do, I think PAVE does it, just has sort of a regular framework for conducting surveys. I mean, they put them together in a certain way. They know how to push them out. They have ways of defining the, enough surveys to understand where they're coming from, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it'd be good for us to be able to do that in a much bigger way than we do. Maybe this could be an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious if we have like a social media budget or something. Because even if we said we were going to put, I don't know, $500 behind a Facebook ad when we do the survey, that actually might go a long way to getting people. And if we target it to certain zip codes or something, because we know we want a heftier response, because we know where kids live, we know who tends not to be as responsive to things like surveys. I wonder if that's something we could do or we should do. I don't know of it being against the rules, other than we just haven't done it yet, but.
No, I agree with you.
So I'm gonna list that as a possible budget thing. Are there other budget items we might need? I can't think of anything. Darren is raising his hand as if he needs.
No, I'm just looking at the chat right now. I'm just making sure everything is kind of secure on here.
Okay. I appreciate you. We appreciate you.
I saw somebody else try to come in and sneak around as an attendee for a few minutes.
Tried it. Okay. I don't see anything else. There's nothing else that stands out to me as needed. I do remember that last year, and we didn't get anybody to bid on it, but I remember last year we had asked for a contractor or something as the board to do the meetings for us. Didn't we have something like that? Darren, tell me if I'm crazy. And then we ended up doing it ourselves.
Could you say that one more time? And also, going back to social media budget, we can absolutely add that to the budget priority for it.
Last year when we talked about those fall engagements, one of the things that came up was we had asked if like, we had talked about maybe, I want to say it was the possibility of hiring an external facilitator. There was some cost associated with doing the meetings beyond staff support. But I don't think we got anyone to bid on the contract.
I believe that's correct. That sounds, I know it was coming up to a short deadline, so nobody was able to, or no one was willing to jump on that. But yeah, I think that was the case.
Okay. I mean, was there a reason that we went that route instead of the staff route last year, other than capacity? Like, is that something we would have a need for or plan for again?
I think if there is a plan, I think just starting to put together, like putting a bid out earlier would increase our chances of getting someone like a facilitator or something like that. But just giving enough room for that, you're much more likely to get not just someone bidding, but you'd have possibly more people or more vendors and more options to choose from if the more time you have.
Okay, I'm just going to list it as a question mark because we're coming up on time. I can't think of anything else that's like burning that we would need to discuss. Go ahead. Sorry, Darren.
One other thing that does cost money, that to keep in mind, is also translations, like Spanish translations, things like that. So if you want to keep that in mind as well, translators, or if you're going to build out a survey or any pamphlets or anything like that, having it in Amharic, Spanish, any of those languages, that costs money as well.
Thank you, Darren. That is a huge catch. All right, we are at 2:02. So if there's nothing else that immediately comes to mind, Darren and I will take a crack at updating our work plan to reflect the things we've added for 2022 and just kind of reverse engineering from our deadline. We will send it to you all so you can give us any feedback before it goes, is submitted from our committee. And I will make sure to follow up with Representative Parker to see if there's any feedback that he has as well. Does that sound right? I probably need to commit. Darren and I probably need to give ourselves a deadline. These are due at the end of the month, Darren. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm going to jump off, guys. Okay, I know we're nearing the end anyway.
All right.
All right. Thank
We'll
you
give
all.
ourselves a deadline. Thank you. All right, we'll get that done. Can we say by next Wednesday, Darren? Not this Wednesday. Let's say by the 18th. Let's give ourselves a week.
So by next Friday?
Yeah, next Friday or Monday, maybe. I feel like if I go too far out, then I'm gonna forget about it.
So that would be the 18th. Yeah, that should be
the
fine.
18th or the 21st. I just want to make sure we give people about a week to give feedback. So, and then I want to make sure we have a time to account for and adjust for any feedback. So can we give ourselves to the 18th? That way we can send it to people on Monday, and then they can give us feedback by the 25th. And then that way that'll give us a couple of days to incorporate feedback and meet the deadline of the 31st.
That makes sense. So you're saying to meet, you and I would meet on Friday, and between now and then, is there anything else? I guess we could.
Oh, you and I can work online together. We just need to update the work plan. So by the 18th, we want to be able to send to everybody, or we want to backwards engineer. I need to get Zach's feedback for this initial round. So that way we can send to everybody on Friday and say, hey, here's what came out of the meeting. Here's what Representative Parker added. Tell us if you have any feedback They can send us any feedback by the 25th. We'll give them a week. We'll give the committee a week to send us any feedback. And then if there are things we need to adjust, that gives us a few days to incorporate anything additional. So it should be a bunch of buffer time built into that, but is that okay?
Yeah, that works. I can work with you. I'm gonna go back and work on the notes as well for this, so I'll share this out. Make sure Zachary gets a copy of the notes from this meeting.
Okay.
And also perhaps I can create a tab in here for the budget so we could,
That would be awesome.
but I'd be happy to continue working on just building this out.
Okay. That is, sounds perfect to me. I think we have accomplished everything we could possibly accomplish in this meeting. Thank you, Representative Patterson, for hanging in there with us.
You're on mute.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
And I'm happy to say we are adjourned.
Okay. See you later.
Enjoy
Have
the
a good
day.
weekend. Enjoy some of the sun.
Yes.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Bye.